Hi everyone, this is Anushka and welcome back to my channel A in Economist. So if you are someone who has followed my simultaneous equation model lecture video, which is just the previous video which I have posted in this advanced econometrics playlist, then you will know there we have discussed what is simultaneous equation model. We have gone into the structure of the model and then we have discussed an important problem that we face in case of simultaneous equation model, which is known as the problem of identification, right? So we have theoretically understood what is the problem of identification in our previous video. So if you haven't seen that video, I would recommend you to check that video out first, because that is the most essential, that is pre-requirement for going into this video, right? So here in this particular video, what we are going to discuss, we are going to formalize that concept, right? We are going to formalize that concept and we will go into the formal condition. So whatever we understood theoretically, we will try to convert it into algebraic conditions, right? The theoretical foundations that we built up in our previous video. So basically what we said that in order to estimate a model, in order to estimate a structural equation, you need to have enough number of excluded exogenous variables that will be acting as the exogenous shifter, right? So we have gone into the diagrams of demand, supply, market equilibrium in the previous video. There we have discussed the role of exogenous shifters that are absolutely essential in order to identify or in order to trace out the path of a particular structural equation. And that is basically the identification, right? Theoretically, that is the concept of identification. So identification basically helps you to identify which of the structural equations can be estimated and which of the structural equations cannot be estimated. Only those structural equations which satisfy the conditions that we will discuss today. We will discuss the necessary condition in this video, which is also known as the order condition, right? So we'll particularly go into order condition in this video, which is the necessary condition. If a structural equation satisfies this order condition, then you will say yes, the equation is identified, which basically means we can find out unique parameter estimation. We can get the unique parameter estimation. Why this is so? Because we have enough number of exogenous instruments that will help us to identify that particular equation, right? So that is the background with which we are starting today's video. Again, I am saying if you haven't watched that video, check that video first. And this is going to be a continuation of the discussion that we already had in the previous video, right? So with this, let us start with the condition. Here, to understand the order condition, you only need to know these three variables. You only need to know these three variables. If you understand this, what is k, what is g, and what is m, then this order condition will become a game, because it's very simple. There is nothing more that you can do. There is only these three basic notations or three variables that you have to understand, right? So understand what is this variable k first. What is k? K is the total number of variables in a system of equations. Suppose you have three system of equations: first equation, second equation, third equation. Now, in all these three equations, what are the total number of variables that is present? Whether it is endogenous or exogenous, that doesn't matter. All the endogenous variables and exogenous variables will form the variable k, right? So that is the k. Now understand what is this g variable. The g variable denotes the total number of endogenous variables in the system. So in all these three equations, so the simple way of understanding this is that the number of equations. So if you have three equations, you will have three variables, three endogenous variables. Understand this. The number of endogenous variables are always equals to the total number of equations that you have. This is the fundamental rule. This is a thumb rule, basically. Even if you cannot identify which one is endogenous, which one is exogenous, it's very simple to determine whatever things are there, whatever variables are there on the left hand side. So left hand side of the equality, basically, right? Left hand side of the equality, whatever variables you have, they are the endogenous variables. Now, if you have three equations, then you will have three variables on the left hand side of the equality sign. Then the total number of endogenous variable will be exactly equals to the total number of equations. So G will be basically, you can, use it interchangeably. You can say it as the number of equations that are present into the system of equations or the total number of endogenous variables in a model. And there is a third variable, which is the most important to understand, which is the variable m. M denotes the number of variables. It can be both endogenous and exogenous, which is included in a particular equation that you want to identify. Suppose you have three system of equations. System of basically your system contains three basic equations, structural equations. You want to know whether the first equation is identified or not. Right? The question is formed in this particular way only in different examinations. That whether the first equation, what can you say about the first equation, whether it is identified or not. So in this particular equation, the first equation, you will calculate the total number of endogenous and exogenous variables that are included in this particular equation only, in the first equation only. Then if you have identified, if you can identify these three variables, your job is almost done. Then what you have to do, you have to apply the order condition, which basically tells you that for a structural equation to be identified, the total number of excluded variables from that equation must be at least equals to g minus 1. So the condition is simply this. If you know what is the k value, if you know what is the value of k, if you know what is the value of m, and if you know what is the value of g, then you can simply calculate what is k minus m. Now, why do we calculate k minus m? K minus m, if you see here, k minus m is nothing but the total number of excluded exogenous variables that we need. So basically, this is the total number of exogenous shifter that are present in your model. Now I hope you can relate this to the theoretical thing that we have discussed in the previous video. See, I have told you that exogenous shifters help you to identify the equation, right? Exogenous shifter. So for a particular equation, if you know what is the total number of variables in the system, that will be denoted by k, total number of endogenous plus exogenous. This is endo plus exo. Both the variables are denoted in this variable k, right? This is in the total system of equation. And in this variable m, you again calculate the total number of endogenous and exogenous variables, but this is for a particular equation and not for the entire system. Not for the entire system. So basically, if you subtract this and you get a number, that will denote that many exogenous shifters are present in the system, but not in the equation itself. That is why they are excluded. Excluded means excluded from that particular equation that we are talking about, right? Excluded from the particular equation. That is why we have to take this subtraction. I know it can be a little confusing, but please try to understand what I'm saying. I'll give you the example that will basically clear your concepts. I know that, but just if you have any questions, you can post me down in the comment section. I will reply to that. Now see, K is the total number of endogenous and exogenous variables that are present in the system. M is the total exogenous and endogenous variable present in a particular equation. Now, if you take this subtract, if you subtract M from K, what you will get? You will get the total number of excluded exogenous variables. So all the variables that are present into the system, but they are not present in the particular equation that you try to identify. So they are basically the total number of excluded shifters that will help you to identify the equation, right? So that is what I have written here. The total number of excluded exogenous variable from the equation is k minus m. Out of this, some of the excluded variables may be exogenous instruments, which will help you to identify the equation, right? These will help you to identify the equation. Now, what is the basic criteria? The basic criteria is that this number of excluded exogenous shifters has to be greater than equals to g minus 1. Has to be greater than equals to g minus 1. Now, why this g minus 1? So I have told you g is the total number of endogenous variables. So in order to identify an equation, you need to have sufficient number of excluded variables. Sufficient number of excluded exogenous variables, that is what you need in order to identify. Now you are dealing with three, suppose G is 3. So if you have 3 endogenous variables, then you at least need two, the excluded exogenous variable has to be at least equals to 2, because see, if you want to if you want to estimate three structural equations, so you need at least three shifters. You need at least three shifters, which will help you to identify the equations. Now, one endogenous variable is already included in the model in the particular equation that you are trying to estimate. So, what is the additional number of instruments that you need? That will be simply 3 minus 1, which is 2. That is why it is G minus 1. To better understand this intuition, I have given you this paragraph. So if you see here, I think it will be more clear to you. See, intuition behind this formula, why this formula is required, k minus m greater equals to g minus 1, why this is needed. See, you are trying to estimate one structural equation at a time. Basically, at a time you are estimating one structural equation out of the system where the variables are jointly determined. That is why they are simultaneous equations, right? Because one dependent variable in one equation becomes independent variable in the other equation. That is why we need the simultaneous determination of all the variables at the same time. Thus, to isolate the causal impact of your target equation, you need external information. External information will be in terms of exogenous shifters, that is excluded exogenous variables, to separate it from the rest of the system, right? Now, the minimum number of such variables required is g minus 1. If you have g endogenous variables, see, because you must deal with g number of endogenous variables, and 1 is being already determined in a particular equation. Suppose you are trying to estimate the second equation. You want to know whether the second equation is estimable or identifiable or not. Then the endogenous variable, suppose y2 is the endogenous variable for this. So this variable is already taken. This variable is already taken. How many extra variables, extra exogenous shifters that you need? That is simply g minus 1, right? One less. So this one is already included here. This is the second equation. This y2 is there. So extra variables. So the main intuition is that you need enough number of excluded variables such that you can separate the effect of that from the rest of the systems, right? So this is the basic intuition. If you want, you can take a screenshot and give it a try to read this, to understand these things on your own. I have tried to explain you. If you don't get this concept till now, then I would recommend you to sit with the concept in your free time. And if you again encounter any problems, any questions, you can let me know, right? So the basic thing is that you need enough number of exogenous shifters. That should, the exogenous shifter should not be less than the total number of endogenous variable that you need. And one endogenous variable is already there in the model. That is why you need g minus 1 additional endogenous shifters, so that you do not have lack of external information, right? Lack of external information will not help you to identify the equation. You need sufficient number of exogenous shifters that will help you to identify the structural equations, right? So if you summarize this concept, then what you can say is that you have three different conditions in order condition. If you find out that you know what is the value of k, m, and g, then you can simply find out what is k minus m, and you can find out simply what is g minus 1, right? So these two values you can find out. Now, if you see, this k minus m value is strictly less than g minus 1, then what you can say, the total number of exogenous shifter is not enough, right? K minus m is, if it is less than g minus 1, then with this k minus m number of exogenous instruments, you cannot identify the structural equation. That is why this condition, the interpretation is that it will be under identification. And if under identification is there, you cannot estimate the model. Remember, in the previous video, I have told you that identification comes prior to estimation. If your equation is not identified, that is, so under identified is the same as not identified. If your equation is not identified, then you cannot go into estimation. Identification always comes prior to estimation. If you see that your equation is under identified, which also means it is not identified. Under identified means you have lack of information or lack of exogenous variables. That is why you cannot estimate the model. You cannot estimate the model if this condition is holding. K minus m is less than g minus 1. So what you can do some more research. You can dig deeper into the topic. You can try to find out more information. You can collect more exogenous variables and try again. Only when your condition 2 or condition 3 gets satisfied, only then you will say your identification condition, the order condition is satisfied. See, the second is k minus m is exactly equals to g minus 1, which means the total number of exogenous shifters is exactly equals to the number that you need, number of exogenous shifter that you need. That is why this will be exactly identified. This is the exact identification. So you have just enough instruments to identify your model and hence to estimate. If your model is exactly identified, it qualifies for estimation, right? If your equation is just identified, this exactly identified is also named as the just identified. Just identified. If this is the case, then you have just enough number of instruments to identify your model. And since this order condition is satisfied here, you can also go into estimation. And the third criteria, if k minus m exceeds g minus 1, then you have more exogenous variable than you need, right? You have more exogenous shifters than you need to estimate the model. That is why it is the over identification. Over identification means you have more than enough instruments. So again, you can go into estimation and you will get more than one unique estimates for your structural equation. Here you will get the unique estimates, and here you will get more than one number of estimates for the structural parameters. So in summary, what you can say, if your condition 2 and condition 3 is satisfied, if these two conditions are satisfied, then only you will say the order condition is satisfied. Only in these two criteria you will say the order condition is satisfied, and hence you can go into estimation. Your estimation will be valid estimation, right? That is why you can go into estimation and your estimation will be valid. If your model is just identified, you will get unique estimate, and if your model is over identified, you will get more than one estimates for your structural parameters. And in these two cases, the order conditions are satisfied. Only in the first case, when the first case is holding, that is k minus m is less than g minus 1, you will say the order condition is not satisfied. Order condition is invalid, it's not satisfied. And since order condition is the necessary condition, order condition is the necessary condition. Let me write it down. Order condition is the necessary condition. If this condition gets violated, then you cannot go further. You cannot go into estimation. For estimation, the order condition has to be satisfied in case of simultaneous equation model. I hope this explanation is clear to you. So you will get either one of the three cases. Accordingly, you have to decide whether you can estimate the model or not. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that order condition is only the necessary condition, but it is not the sufficient condition. It may be so that your model is say just identified or it is over identified. These condition is holding, but still it cannot be identified unless the rank condition is satisfied. There is one more condition, and this rank condition thing I'll discuss in the next video. This video is dedicated for the order condition. So please keep this in mind that order condition is just a necessary condition. This is the first order condition that is necessary for identification, but it is not sufficient. It can be so that order condition is satisfied, but the rank condition is not satisfied. In that case, you will say that no, the equation is not identified, right? Now, I hope this discussion is fine as of now. Now, let us go into an example that will help you to understand this concept better. So this is a classic example. Suppose you have three equations. Three structural equation is given to you. Why it is structural? Because it is based on some economic theory. Some theory, right? So first equation is the output equation. Second is the consumption equation. And third is the investment equation. Structural means the equations that you model from the economic theories, right? Definitely directly coming from the theory, that will be structural. Now see, in the first equation, now what you have to do using order condition, you have to say which of the equations are identified and in what kind of identification, whether it is under identified, whether it is over identified, or it is just identified. That is what you have to do. So here, see, firstly observe one thing, that here you have three equations and there will be three endogenous variables. What are the endogenous variables? As I have told you, the variables on the left hand side of the equation. So this is the first endogenous variable, this is the second endogenous variable, and this is the third endogenous variable. And see, observe this thing, that endogenous variable in one equation becomes exogenous variable in some other equation. So basically they are not exogenous, basically they are coming on the right hand side also, not exogenous, they are endogenous, but they can come on the right hand side also. That is why there is a feedback loop that is going on, that we have already seen in the examples that we previously gave. So the endogenous variable in one equation can also feature in on the right hand side, right? I hope this feedback loop is clear to you. Now understand this, these three are the endogenous variables that are fine. Now how many exogenous variables are there? See, y1 is the output here, y2 is the consumption, and y3 is the total investment, right? Now how many exogenous variables are there? Exogenous variables are denoted as x in this equation. See, x1 is the first exogenous variable, x2 is another exogenous variable, and x3 is another exogenous variable. So altogether you have three exogenous variables, and since they are coming in the structural equation, they should also have some interpretation. So for example, here I have given you x1 is the interest rate, x2 is the government spending, and x3 is the tax rate. So they can give you in any ways. This is a random example that I wanted to tell you. Now, from these equations, can you pause the video and think what will be the value of k then? Remember, k is the total number of endogenous and exogenous variable in the entire system. So combining equation 1, equation 2, and equation 3, how many total number of variables are there? Can you pause the video and think? So if you see, K will be consisting all, firstly, all the endogenous variable, that is y1, y2, y3, and also all the exogenous variable, which is x1, x2, and x3. So how many variables are there? 6. So the value of K will be 6, and that will be same for all the equations. That will be same when you consider the order condition for all the equations. Now, another variable will be constant for all the equation is the G value. What is G? G is the total endogenous variables or the total equation that is present, that is 1, 2, and 3. There are three endogenous variables, so y1, y2, y3. Namely, these three are the total endogenous variables, and this is the same as the total number of equations. So G is also fine. So for each of the equation, when you calculate the order condition, the K value will be 6 and the G value will be 3. That is for sure. The only thing that will vary will be the value of m. For each of the three equations, the value of m will vary. That will depend on the total number of endogenous and exogenous variables for a particular equation. For a particular equation, and that will help you to determine which one will be over identified or under identified or just identified, right? So that is what we will now do. We will consider each of the equation and try to find out the order. See, for the first equation, this is the first equation. As I've told you, K will be 6 and G will be 3. Right? This much is fine. Now, calculate what will be M. Can you pause the video and think for yourself what will be the value of M? Which of the variables that you will take for M? Total endogenous, exogenous variable that is present in the particular equation 1. So, for the first equation, basically, for the first equation, what will be this value? See, this is 1, this is 2, that this is 3, and this is 4. So in the first equation, you have two endogenous variable, that is y1, y2, and two exogenous variable, that is x1 and x2. So total value of n will be 4. Four variables are there present in the particular equation 1. Right? So you have all the variables that you need for your analysis. So k minus m will be what? 6 minus 4, that is 2. So in the first equation, so if you go back to the equation, in the first equation, what you see, you have two extra exogenous variables. You have two exogenous variables that are not present in the system, that are not present in this particular equation, but they are present in the model. Right? If this value is 2, see, k is 6. 6 is the total number of endogenous and exogenous variables in the model. And M denotes the total exogenous endogenous variable in a particular equation, that is for the first equation currently. Now, if you take this difference, this will give you the total number of variables that are excluded from this particular equation 1, but they are present in the model, and that can be potentially used for identification because some of them will be exogenous variable, and that we can use as the shifter, as an exogenous shifter. I hope this is clear. And G minus 1 is simple. 3 minus 1, this will be 2. So what you see here, you see that k minus m is exactly equals to g minus 1 equals to 2. Right? This condition is that here it is exactly equal. And now if you go back to the summary table that I have shown you, see in the table, if k minus m is exactly equals to g minus 1, what can you say? You will say the equation is just identified, right? The equation is just identified. So that is what will be the conclusion for the first equation, identified. First equation will be just identified. So hence, If it is just identified, then we will say the order condition is satisfied. As I've told you, order condition is satisfied, and then we will say the first equation qualifies for estimation, right? The first equation is eligible to go for the estimation purpose. Now, the similar analysis we can do for the second and the third equation. Let me show you. For the second equation, k remains the same and the g also remains the same. Only thing is n. Now, I hope it becomes clear to you that n will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, y2 is endogenous, y1, then you have y3, then you have x1, x2, and x3. These are endogenous and these are exogenous, so total 6. So what is k minus m? K minus m is 6 minus 6, which is 0. There is no exogenous shifter. There is no exogenous shifter, but still you have to identify this. You have to deal with these two endogenous variables more, which is not possible. So see, k minus m is strictly less than g minus 1. And if this is the case from the summary table that you will see from the summary table, k minus m, if it is strictly less than g minus 1, then the order condition fails and you are under identified and you cannot estimate the model, right? So this is the case for under identification. Under identification, and if this is the case, then you cannot go into estimation. You cannot go into estimation, so you need more information. So this model is not estimable. You need more information in order to go into estimation. Now, in the similar fashion, you can go into the third equation. In the third equation, k remains the same and g remains the same. These two are not changing. Only variable that is changing is m. Here, see 1, 2, and 3. So only three variables are there. So y, if everything in y, they will be endogenous and x will be exogenous. X2 is only exogenous. So this total is 3. So k minus m will be 6 minus 3, which is equals to 3, and g minus 1 is 3 minus 1, which is 2. Now what you see, k minus m is strictly greater than g minus 1. This is 3 and this is 2. Now again from the table, if you see, if k minus m is strictly greater than g minus 1, the equation is over-identified. So there are more number of instruments that are present. So this equation is over-identified. This equation is over-identified and it also qualifies for estimation. It also qualifies for estimation. And that is the way you have to check the order condition for each of the model or each of the equation basically. So we started off with three equations, equation 1, equation 2, equation 3. And we have particularly looked at each of the equation individually and we have determined whether each of the equation is estimable or not. In the first equation, we have got that it is just identified. If it is just identified, order condition is satisfied, then you can go into estimation. Estimation is also valid. In the second equation, we have seen the k minus m is strictly less than g minus 1, which means it is under identified. Estimation is not possible. In the third equation, we have seen k minus m is strictly greater than g minus 1, which means it is over identified and hence estimation is possible. So I have given you an example where you get to see all the cases, right? We have discussed what is under identification, over identification, and just identification. I have given you the example in such a way such that I can show you all the possibilities. I hope this thing is absolutely clear to you. And here is a homework problem that I have given you. You can try this in your free time. Please take a screenshot or you can pause the video and do it for yourself. Very simple example, exactly the same thing that I have taught you today. And I would like to know the answers that you will get. So in the comment section, please comment me down that what you get for the homework problem for equation 1. What is the order for equation 2 and for equation 3? What is the order that you will get and what do you think? Which of the equation is estimable and which of the equation is not estimable, right? So let me know in the comment section and I hope you find this video helpful. In the next day, we will be starting off with the rank condition. So order is the necessary condition, rank is the sufficient condition. So in the next video, we'll take the similar example, the same example that I have shown you today. I'll take that example only and I'll show you how you can check the rank condition to get to a proper conclusion that whether the equation is estimable or not, right? I hope you find this video helpful. And if you do, please hit the like button and do subscribe to this channel, AM Economist, because that helps me immensely to continue making such useful videos for you every single week. And if you like my endeavor, then do support my channel, show your love, and I'll meet you in the next video, right? So thank you so much for your time.